She wore old clothes and sat quietly in seat 24A while rich passengers made fun of her for 3 hours. Then their airplane lost all its power and started falling from the sky. That's when the woman May laughed and stood up and said her military nickname. Everything changed in seconds. Before you watch the full story, comment below telling which country you are watching from. Don't forget to subscribe. Maya Chin stood in a long line at Los Angeles International Airport, holding her ticket in her old, worn hands. The paper had wrinkles from being folded and opened many times. She looked like any other tired traveler waiting to get on flight A847 to Washington, D.C. She wore plain blue jeans with a small rip near the left knee and an old green jacket that had faded from being washed so many years. Her black hair was pulled back with a simple rubber band, and she carried an old canvas backpack that looked like it came from a military second-hand store. To everyone around her, she was just another passenger trying to get home. Behind her in line stood rich business people in expensive suits, talking loudly about their important meetings in Washington. In front of her, a group of college students laughed about their spring break plans. Nobody paid any attention to the quiet woman in the simple clothes. "Next," called the gate agent, a young man named Kevin, who had been working for the airline for only 6 months. Maya handed him her ticket. "Seat 24A, business class," Kevin said, looking surprised. He checked his computer screen twice. "Ma'am, are you sure this is your ticket?" "Yes," Maya said quietly. "That's my seat." Kevin shrugged and handed back her ticket. "Okay, you can get on now." As Maya walked down the narrow airplane aisle, she noticed the stares from other business class passengers. A man in a $3,000 suit looked her up and down with disgust. A woman wearing diamond earrings whispered something to her friend and pointed at Maya's old backpack. "Excuse me," Maya said politely to a large man blocking the aisle. He wore a gold watch that probably cost more than most people made in a year. "Economy is in the back," he said rudely, not moving from his spot. "I'm in seat 24A, Maya replied, showing her ticket. The man, whose name tag read Richard Sterling Real Estate, looked at her ticket with disbelief. "Business class? You must have gotten some kind of charity ticket." He moved aside slowly, shaking his head. "These airlines will let anyone sit up here now," he said to his friend. Maya found her window seat and put her backpack under the seat in front of her. The bag was old and green with small patches sewn onto it. Most people would think they were just decorations, but each patch told a story that would shock these passengers if they knew the truth. Next to her sat Mrs. Victoria Hamilton, a rich widow from Beverly Hills. She looked at Maya like she was something dirty that had wandered onto the plane by mistake. "I hope you're not one of those nervous flyers," Mrs. Hamilton said coldly. "I hate it when people panic during bumpy rides." Maya smiled politely. "I'm fine with flying," she said. Across the aisle, a businessman named Dr. James Morrison was talking loudly to his colleague about his medical practice. "The problem with this country," he said, "is that we're lowering our standards everywhere. Even the airlines are letting the wrong kind of people into business class now." His friend, "Allow your name Thomas Wright," nodded. "I know what you mean. Look around this cabin. It's not what it used to be." They both glanced at Maya, making it clear who they were talking about. The flight attendant, Sarah Johnson, came by to take drink orders. She smiled warmly at all the other passengers, but barely looked at Maya. "What can I get you to drink?" she asked Mrs. Hamilton sweetly. "Champagne, please," Mrs. Hamilton replied. Sarah turned to Maya with a forced smile. "And for you?" "Water is fine," Maya said. "Just water?" Sarah asked, sounding surprised. "We have juice, soda, coffee. Water, please." Sarah shrugged and moved on. As she walked away, Maya heard her whisper to another flight attendant, "Probably can't afford anything else." At 9:15 a.m., Flight A847 took off from Los Angeles, climbing into the clear morning sky. The plane was a Boeing 777-300, one of the airline's newest aircraft. As they reached flying altitude of 37,000 feet, the passengers settled in for the 5-hour flight to Washington. Maya looked out her window at the clouds below. She had seen this view thousands of times before, but from a very different kind of aircraft. The other passengers had no idea that the quiet woman in seat 24A had more flight hours than all the commercial pilots they had ever flown with combined. "So what do you do for work?" Mrs. Hamilton asked Maya, though her tone suggested she wasn't really interested in the answer. "I used to work for the government," Maya replied simply. Mrs. Hamilton laughed. "Oh, a government worker. That explains the cheap clothing." She gestured at Maya's simple outfit with obvious disgust. Behind them, Richard Sterling was telling a story to his business partner. "I'm flying to D.C. to close a $50 million deal," he said loudly. "Not everyone on this plane can say they're doing something that important." Dr. Morrison joined the conversation. "I'm speaking at a medical conference about my new surgery method. It's going to change heart surgery forever." Thomas Wright nodded. "And I'm representing a client in a Supreme Court case. Really important stuff." They all looked at Maya, waiting for her to be impressed or to share what important business brought her to Washington. When she didn't respond, they seemed to decide she wasn't worth their attention. Some people just don't understand what real success looks like. Mrs. Hamilton said loud enough for Maya to hear. Maya stayed quiet, reading a paperback book she had pulled from her backpack. The book was about aircraft maintenance, but she held it so others couldn't see the cover. 2 hours into the flight, the meal service began. The flight attendants brought out fancy menus for the business class passengers, describing the fancy food choices available. "Today we have beef tenderloin with truffle sauce or pan-seared salmon with lemon butter," Sarah announced cheerfully. "And for dessert, we have chocolate mousse or fresh berry tart." She handed elegant menus to every passenger except Maya. "I'm sorry," Sarah said when she reached Maya's seat. "We only printed enough menus for our regular business class customers. But don't worry, I can tell you what we have." Maya looked up calmly. "That's fine. I'll have whatever is easiest." Mrs. Hamilton smirked. "Some people just aren't used to fine dining," she whispered to the passenger behind her when the meals came. Everyone else received their food on real china plates with metal silverware and cloth napkins. Maya got her meal on a plastic tray with plastic utensils, like the meals served in economy class. "Oh my," said Dr. Morrison, noticing the difference. "I think there's been some kind of mistake with your meal." "It's fine," Maya said, starting to eat. Richard Sterling laughed. "Maybe that's what she ordered. Some people prefer simple food." The insults continued throughout the meal. The passengers seemed to enjoy making fun of Maya, thinking she was too poor or uneducated to understand what they were really saying. "I bet she's never eaten in a real restaurant," Thomas Wright said quietly to his neighbor. "Probably thinks McDonald's is fancy dining," replied Mrs. Hamilton with a cruel smile. Maya continued eating her simple meal, showing no reaction to their comments. She had eaten much worse food in much worse conditions, though these passengers would never believe such a thing if she told them. As the meal service ended, the comments became more direct and cruel. "I wonder how she even afforded a business class ticket," Dr. Morrison said to his friend, speaking loud enough for Maya to hear. "Probably using food stamps," Thomas Wright replied with a laugh. Richard Sterling joined in. "I heard they have government programs now that help people like her fly. Our tax dollars at work." Mrs. Hamilton added her own cruel observation. "Look at those clothes. That jacket looks like it came from a thrift store. And those shoes, I wouldn't donate them to charity." Maya continued reading her book, but her grip on the pages tightened slightly. She had heard worse insults in combat zones, but somehow the casual cruelty of these civilians felt different. "Ma'am," Sarah said as she collected Maya's plastic tray. "I hope the meal was okay for you. I know it's not what you're probably used to eating." The other passengers laughed at this comment, thinking it was a clever insult. Maya looked up at Sarah with calm eyes. "It was fine, thank you." But inside, Maya was remembering other meals, field rations eaten in a cockpit while flying through enemy fire, cold MREs eaten in desert bunkers between bombing runs. These people had no idea what real hardship looked like. At 12:30 p.m. Somewhere over Kansas, everything changed. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Rodriguez," came the voice over the intercom. "We're having some technical problems with our navigation systems. Please remain seated while we work to fix the issue." Most passengers didn't think much of the announcement. Technical problems were common on commercial flights, and they usually got fixed quickly, but Maya's head snapped up from her book. She had heard something in the captain's voice that the other passengers missed, a carefully controlled tension that suggested this was much more serious than a simple technical problem. 10 minutes later, the captain's voice returned, and this time, the strain was obvious. "Folks, we're going to need to make an emergency landing. Our navigation and communication systems have failed, and we're having trouble staying in contact with air traffic control." Now the passengers started to worry. Mrs. Hamilton gripped her armrest tightly. Dr. Morrison's face went pale. Richard Sterling stopped bragging about his business deals and started looking nervous. "What does that mean?" asked Thomas Wright loudly. "Are we going to crash?" A flight attendant tried to calm the passengers. "Please don't worry. The pilots are trained for situations like this. We'll be fine." But Maya could tell from the crew's body language that they were far from fine. She had seen that look before, the look of people who were in serious trouble and running out of options. 15 minutes later, the situation got much worse. "This is Captain Rodriguez again," the voice came over the intercom, now clearly strained. "I need to be honest with you. We've lost most of our electronic systems due to what appears to be a planned cyber attack on aircraft systems. We're flying blind and we can't communicate with ground control." The cabin erupted in panicked voices. "Cyber attack?" Mrs. Hamilton screamed. "What does that mean? Are we going to die?" shouted Dr. Morrison. Richard Sterling was on his phone trying to call his office. But there was no signal. The flight attendants tried to maintain order, but they were clearly as scared as the passengers. "Please remain calm," Sarah announced, though her voice was shaking. "The pilots are working to fix the situation." But Maya knew the truth. She had studied cyber warfare extensively during her military career. If someone had successfully attacked multiple aircraft systems at the same time, this was much more than a simple technical failure. This was an act of war. She also knew something else that terrified her. Without navigation and communication systems, this 777 was basically a giant glider that would eventually run out of fuel and crash. Maya unbuckled her seatbelt and stood up. "Ma'am, please sit down," Sarah said firmly. "We need everyone to remain seated." "I need to speak with the pilots," Maya said calmly. "I'm sorry, but passengers aren't allowed in the cockpit, especially during an emergency." Maya looked Sarah directly in the eyes. "My name is Maya Chin. I'm a retired Air Force pilot with 30 years of combat experience. I've flown through cyber attacks before, and I might be able to help." Sarah stared at her in disbelief. "You're a pilot?" "I was," Maya said. "And right now I might be the only person on this plane who knows how to navigate without electronic systems." Mrs. Hamilton overheard and laughed hysterically. "Her? She's just some nobody in cheap clothes. She's probably lying." But Sarah saw something in Maya's eyes that made her hesitate. There was a calmness and authority there that didn't match the simple clothes and quiet manner. "Well, I'll ask the captain," Sarah said uncertainly. She used the internal phone to call the cockpit. Maya could only hear one side of the conversation. "Captain, There's a passenger who says she's a retired Air Force pilot. Yes, sir, Maya Chin. Yes, sir. I'll bring her up. Sarah hung up and looked at Maya with new respect. The captain wants to see you immediately. Maya followed Sarah to the front of the plane and into the cockpit. Captain Rodriguez and First Officer Peterson looked exhausted and desperate. The cockpit was dark except for a few emergency lights. Most of the electronic displays were completely black. You're the Air Force pilot? Captain Rodriguez asked. Retired, Maya said. What's your situation? Everything's gone, First Officer Peterson said. Navigation, communication, autopilot, even our backup systems. Someone hit us with some kind of super virus that's spreading through aircraft worldwide. Maya studied the dead instruments. What about manual controls? Still working? Yes, Captain Rodriguez replied. But we're flying blind. No GPS, no radio contact, no way to know where we are or where we're going. Maya nodded. I can help with that. Do you have any paper charts on board? Just the emergency backup charts, Peterson said. But they're pretty basic. That's all we need, Maya said confidently. I can navigate by dead reckoning using visual landmarks. It's an old technique, but it works. Captain Rodriguez looked doubtful. With all due respect, ma'am, this isn't a small plane. This is a 777 with 300 passengers. Maya smiled for the first time since boarding the plane. Captain, I've navigated B-52 bombers through enemy territory with no electronics. I think I can handle your 777. For the next hour, Maya worked with the pilots to figure out their position and plan a route to the nearest airport they could use. She used visual landmarks on the ground, the position of the sun, and her internal clock to calculate their approximate location. According to my calculations, we're about 200 miles southwest of Kansas City, she announced. If we keep our current heading and descend gradually, we should be able to make it to Kansas City International Airport. But how will we land without radio contact? Peterson asked. The tower won't know we're coming. We'll have to do an emergency visual approach, Maya explained. It's risky, but it's our best option. As they worked together, Maya's true expertise became obvious. She knew aircraft systems better than pilots who had been flying commercially for decades. Her knowledge of emergency procedures was complete. Her calm under pressure was remarkable. Ma'am, Captain Rodriguez said finally, what exactly did you fly in the Air Force? Maya hesitated for a moment. Different aircraft, mostly fighters. What fighters? Peterson pressed. F-22 Raptors mostly. Some classified aircraft that I can't discuss. The two commercial pilots stared at her in shock. F-22 pilots were the best of the best, the top fighter pilots in the world. You flew Raptors? Captain Rodriguez whispered. Maya nodded. For 15 years. As they approached Kansas City, Captain Rodriguez made a decision that would change everything. We need fighter escort, he said. Even if we can't communicate with the tower. Maybe we can get the military's attention. He switched to the emergency frequency and began sending on the radio, hoping someone would hear them. Mayday, mayday. This is American Airlines Flight 847. We are approaching Kansas City International Airport with complete systems failure. Requesting immediate assistance. For several minutes there was only static. Then a voice crackled through the speakers. American 847. This is Whiteman Air Force Base. We read you. What is your emergency? Captain Rodriguez quickly explained their situation. The Air Force controller sounded shocked. American 847. You're reporting a cyber attack on your aircraft systems. Confirmed, Rodriguez replied. All electronic navigation and communication systems are down. We're flying on manual control only. Copy that, American 847. We're scrambling fighters to intercept and escort you to Kansas City. What's your current position? Maya took the microphone. Whiteman, this is the navigator on American 847. We're approximately 50 miles southwest of Kansas City International. Altitude 15,000 feet. Heading 090. Copy, American 847. Fighters are airborne. Estimate intercept in 8 minutes. 8 minutes later, 2 sleek gray fighters appeared off the 777's wingtips. The F-22 Raptors flew in perfect formation, their pilots clearly visible in their cockpits. American 847. This is Raptor Lead, came a voice over the radio. We have visual contact. We'll escort you to Kansas City International. In the cockpit of the 777. Captain Rodriguez was amazed by the sight of the advanced fighters. Those are F-22s, he said to Maya. The most advanced fighters in the world. Maya was studying the lead Raptor through the cockpit window. The pilot in the lead aircraft is very good, she observed. Perfect formation flying. Over the radio, they heard the F-22 pilot talking to his wingmen. Raptor 2, maintain position on the starboard side. We'll guide them in. Copy, lead, came the reply. As they flew toward Kansas City. The lead F-22 pilot began asking questions about their navigation abilities. American 847, how are you navigating without GPS? Captain Rodriguez looked at Maya, who took the microphone again. Raptor lead, we're using dead reckoning and visual landmarks. Copy that. Who's your navigator? Retired Air Force, Maya replied simply. What's your background, navigator? Maya hesitated. She had kept her identity secret for so long that it felt strange to reveal it. But with 300 lives at stake, secrecy didn't matter anymore. Raptor lead, call sign Ghost Rider. The radio went completely silent for almost 30 seconds. Then the lead F-22 pilot's voice came back, and it was completely different, filled with awe and respect. Ghost Rider? Did you say Ghost Rider? Confirmed, Maya replied. Stand by. American 847. They could hear the F-22 pilot talking rapidly to someone else on another frequency, but couldn't make out the words. Captain Rodriguez and First Officer Peterson looked at Maya with confusion. What's Ghost Rider? Rodriguez asked. Maya sighed. It was my call sign, but why did he react like that? Peterson wanted to know. Before Maya could answer, the radio crackled to life again. American 847, this is Colonel Marcus Thompson, 509th Bomb Wing Commander. Are you Colonel Maya Chin? Call sign Ghost Rider? Maya took a deep breath. Confirmed, Colonel. Retired Colonel Maya Chin. Ma'am, it's an honor to speak with you. Raptor lead, did you copy that transmission? Yes, sir, came the excited voice of the F-22 pilot. Sir, that's really Ghost Rider? Confirmed, Raptor lead. In the background, they could hear the F-22 pilot talking to his wingman. Dude, that's freaking Ghost Rider, the Ghost Rider. Captain Rodriguez was getting more confused by the minute. What's going on? Why is everyone so excited? Maya looked uncomfortable with the attention. It's not important right now. Let's focus on landing this plane. But over the radio, Colonel Thompson was already explaining to the air traffic controllers at Kansas City International Airport. Kansas City Tower. Be advised that American 847 has Colonel Maya Chin aboard. Call sign Ghost Rider. She's providing navigation assistance. Ghost Rider, came the surprised voice of the air traffic controller. The Ghost Rider? Confirmed. First Officer Peterson couldn't contain his curiosity any longer. Ma'am, who exactly are you? Maya sighed again. I was a fighter pilot for 30 years. I retired 5 years ago. But why is everyone treating you like some kind of celebrity? Before Maya could answer, The lead F-22 pilot came back on the radio. American 847, Ghost Rider. This is Major David Kim. Ma'am, I studied your missions at the Fighter Weapons School. The Syria rescue operation is legendary. Maya closed her eyes briefly. Major Kim, let's focus on the current mission. Yes, ma'am. But ma'am, it's really an honor to be flying escort for you. Captain Rodriguez couldn't let it go. What Syria rescue operation? Over the radio, they could hear Major Kim talking excitedly to ground control. Kansas City Tower, you need to understand who we're dealing with here. Ghost Rider flew the most dangerous rescue mission in modern Air Force history. Major Kim, Maya said firmly into the microphone. That's classified information. Ma'am, it was declassified 2 years ago. The whole Air Force knows the story now. Colonel Thompson's voice came over the radio. Ghost Rider, the Major is correct. Your Syria mission is now taught in our advanced tactical courses. Captain Rodriguez looked at Maya with new eyes. What happened in Syria? Maya was quiet for a long moment. Finally, she spoke. 6 years ago, a special forces team was trapped behind enemy lines. The area was covered by advanced surface-to-air missiles. No rescue was possible using normal methods. What did you do? Peterson asked. I went in alone at night, flying below radar coverage. Major Kim's voice came over the radio again. She flew through the most dangerous airspace in the world, rescued 12 Special Forces soldiers, and destroyed 3 missile sites on her way out. You flew alone into enemy territory? Captain Rodriguez asked, amazed. It was the only way to avoid detection, Maya explained. A single F-22 flying at low altitude can be almost invisible to radar. But how did you find the soldiers in the dark? Night vision and thermal imaging, plus a lot of luck. Over the radio, Colonel Thompson added more details. Ghost Rider's mission saved 12 lives and eliminated threats that had been shooting down our aircraft for months. She was awarded the Air Force Cross. The Air Force Cross, Captain Rodriguez whispered. That was the highest decoration for bravery. Second only to the Medal of Honor. As they continued toward Kansas City, more details of Maya's legendary career came to light. The F-22 pilot seemed to know every mission she had flown. Ghost Rider, Major Kim said over the radio. Is it true you once shot down 4 enemy fighters in a single fight? That's classified, Maya replied. Ma'am, that mission was declassified last year. The Pentagon released the gun camera footage. Maya looked annoyed. They released the footage? Yes, ma'am. It's used in air-to-air combat training now. You're famous on YouTube. Captain Rodriguez and First Officer Peterson stared at Maya in disbelief. You shot down 4 enemy planes? Rodriguez asked. It was a long time ago, Maya said quietly. Colonel Thompson came back on the radio. Ghost Rider, for the benefit of the commercial crew. Perhaps you could share some of your background. Maya was clearly uncomfortable, but she realized these men needed to understand who they were dealing with. I flew combat missions for 25 years, she said finally. F-16s, F-15s, and F-22s. I had some success in air-to-air combat. Some success, Major Kim laughed over the radio. Ma'am, you're the top fighter ace of the 21st century. 18 confirmed kills. 18, Peterson whispered. That's more than any pilot since World War II, Captain Rodriguez added. His voice filled with awe. As they approached Kansas City International Airport, Maya took control of the radio communications with the F-22 escorts. Raptor lead. What's the wind situation at Kansas City? Ghost Rider, winds are 180 degrees at 15 knots. Gusting to 25. Visibility is 10 miles. Ceiling 3,000 feet. Copy. Will approach from the south on runway 19. Understood. Ghost Rider, will maintain escort until you're on final approach. Maya turned to Captain Rodriguez. I recommend a straight-in approach to runway 19L. It's the longest runway, and the wind is right down the pipe. But without radio contact with the tower, how will they know we're coming? The F-22s are talking to them. They'll clear the runway and have emergency equipment standing by. As they began their descent, Maya continued to navigate using visual landmarks. She identified highways, rivers, and buildings on the ground, using them to guide the aircraft toward the airport. "There," she said, pointing out the cockpit window. "Kansas City International Airport, 2 o'clock, about 20 miles. Captain Rodriguez looked where she was pointing and saw the airport in the distance. "How did you spot that so quickly?" "Practice," Maya said simply. "I've been finding targets from aircraft for 30 years. As they approached the airport, Major Kim came on the radio one final time. "Ghost Rider, it's been an honor flying with you today. Raptor flight is breaking off now. Good luck with your landing." "Thank you, Major. You flew a good escort. Ma'am, can I ask you something?" "Go ahead. What's it like being a legend?" Maya was quiet for a moment. "Major, I'm just a pilot who did her job. The real heroes are the people I rescued and the soldiers I protected. I was just a taxi driver." "Yes, ma'am." "But what a taxi driver." The F-22s peeled away as the 777 lined up for final approach to runway 19L, despite having no electronic navigation aids. Maya guided Captain Rodriguez to a perfect landing. The plane touched down smoothly and rolled to a stop. Fire trucks and ambulances were standing by, but they weren't needed. As the passengers cheered and clapped. Maya quietly gathered her things. When the plane stopped at the gate, the business class passengers who had been so cruel to Maya earlier sat in stunned silence. They had just learned that the woman they had mocked and insulted was one of the most decorated fighter pilots in Air Force history. Mrs. Hamilton, who had called Maya's clothes cheap, now realized she had been sitting next to a genuine war hero, Richard Sterling, who had suggested Maya got a charity ticket, understood that he had insulted someone whose courage and skill had saved countless lives. Dr. Morrison and Thomas Wright, who had talked about lowering standards, realized they had been in the presence of someone whose standards were higher than anything they could imagine. Sarah, the flight attendant who had given Maya a plastic meal tray, felt ashamed of her behavior. As Maya prepared to leave the plane, several passengers approached her to apologize. "Colonel Chin," Mrs. Hamilton said, her voice shaking, "I owe you a huge apology. I had no idea who you were." Maya looked at her calmly. "Mrs. Hamilton, you treated me exactly the way you treat anyone who doesn't look wealthy. That says more about your character than mine." "But you saved our lives," Richard Sterling said. "If you hadn't been on this plane," Maya shook her head. "Mr. Sterling, I did what anyone with my training would have done. But the way you treated me before you knew who I was, that shows who you really are." The story of Flight A847 spread around the world within hours. Videos of the F-22 pilots saluting Maya's call sign went viral on social media. News outlets picked up the story of a legendary pilot who had been treated poorly by passengers who didn't know her true identity. Passengers who had been cruel to Maya faced real consequences for their behavior. Social media users identified them from news coverage and airport security footage. Richard Sterling's real estate company lost several major clients who didn't want to be associated with someone who treated veterans poorly. His business reputation in Beverly Hills was badly damaged. Mrs. Hamilton found that her country club friends were less welcoming after they saw her behavior on the news. Several charity organizations asked her to step down from their boards. Dr. Morrison's medical practice suffered when patients saw videos of him insulting a war hero. Many chose to find different doctors. Thomas Wright's law firm asked him to take early retirement after the negative publicity affected their reputation. Sarah, the flight attendant was suspended from her job pending an investigation into her treatment of passengers. But Maya didn't celebrate their misfortune. When reporters asked her about the consequences faced by the passengers, she said simply, "I hope they learn from this experience and treat people better in the future." 3 months later, Maya received a letter from Sarah, the flight attendant. "Dear Colonel Chin," it read, "I've been thinking about that flight every day since it happened. I treated you poorly because I made assumptions about you based on your appearance. I want you to know that your grace and dignity in the face of our cruelty has changed how I view people. I've started a new training program for flight attendants about treating all passengers with respect. I call it the Seat 24 protocol because you never know who you're serving." Maya smiled as she read the letter. She wrote back, "Sarah, I'm glad you learned something from our experience. But remember, even if I hadn't been a decorated pilot, I still deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. Every person does." The story became a lesson taught in business schools about the dangers of making assumptions about customers. Airlines around the world put in place new training programs based on Maya's experience. The Air Force developed a training program called Ghost Rider Protocol, a reminder that you never know who you're talking to or what they've been through. Today, Maya lives quietly in Colorado, working as a flight instructor at a small airport. Her students don't know about her legendary military career unless they ask. To them, she's just Miss Chin, a patient teacher who helps them learn to fly. But sometimes when a student is struggling with confidence, Maya will share a simple piece of wisdom. Remember that how you treat people reflects who you really are. Treat everyone with respect and dignity because you never know who you're talking to. Flying isn't about being perfect, she tells them. It's about staying calm under pressure, making good decisions when things go wrong, and always remembering that you're responsible for the safety of everyone around you. But most importantly, remember that heroes don't always look heroic. They might be sitting quietly in seat 24A, wearing old clothes and carrying a worn backpack. They might be the person you ignore or dismiss without a second thought. You never know who's sitting in seat 24A. Treat everyone with kindness and respect. You never know what battles they fought or what sacrifices they've made. The person sitting next to you might just be a hero in disguise.